to explain how this can be, let me first provide you briefly with some background from modern cognitive science. According to modern cognitive science, the mind involves various types of knowledge and mental processes. This knowledge and these processes can be studied by conducting careful experiments and testing precise theories about them. According to such theories, people have a system of component parts that process information during perception, thinking, judgment, and action. The parts of the human information processing system are connected together in a complex organization that has been analyzed and evaluated. This is a diagram of that organization. It is a cartoon. I will not try to explain it to you in detail, but you may see that it has many different parts. They are all interconnected with each other, and in dealing with the external world and the internal world, information is flowing around through the various different parts of this system. And what we try to do is understand better exactly what is the nature of the various parts of the system and the flow of information through it. So
it reminds, he's also saying that it reminds the Buddhist model of the coming together of objects, then the sense faculty and the perception consciousness.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, a considerable part of what I will say here is entirely consistent with the Buddhist ideas about these concepts and issues. So, to illustrate, for modern cognitive science, the human information processing system has processes for perceiving sensory stimulation. You know what those processes are, of course. They have been recognized in Buddhism, and they include vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and perhaps this one's a little bit special. I will explain. When you move your body like this, there are sensory organs in the joints that let you know where your limbs are. We call the sense that is involved with this kinesthesis. Kines means movement. It is either a Latin or a Greek word, and thesis means sensory.
He's only just wondering whether there is any exact parallel in the Buddhist model.
This is a good question. Perhaps we could discuss it later. Meanwhile, there are also processes for moving parts of the body, head, eyes, arms, hands, and so forth. Processes for feeling emotions, joy, sadness, fear, and so forth. Processes for storing, preserving, and recalling various types of knowledge. In cognitive science, we draw a distinction between different types of memory. One important type of memory, about which you will hear more during the week, is called short-term or working memory. This kind of memory and information used by it typically will last about 30 seconds unless you rehearse it to yourself. And this type of memory has relatively small capacity. It is, for example, used when you try to remember a telephone number or when you try to remember in solving an arithmetic problem. In addition, of course, we have long-term memory. Its duration is years, a lifetime. You remember what your house was like where you were born. Its capacity is enormous, essentially infinite. And you use it for things like remembering what you did in Ann Arbor a year ago when you gave your teachings for Julhart and Gelek Rinpoche. Now, long-term memory contains various kinds of knowledge. One type of knowledge we call declarative knowledge. This is about facts, past episodes, meanings of words, laws of nature. Like if I let go of this control, it will hit the ground. In your declarative knowledge are networks of concepts that contain related pieces of knowledge. For example, the Four Noble Truths. This is an illustration of a network for Buddhist concepts that are presumably in your long-term memory. We start with Buddhism. You know a lot about Buddhism. You know about the Three Seals. You know about the Four Noble Truths. You know about types of meditation. You know that the Three Seals include the one about impermanence, the one about no self, and the one about suffering. You, of course, know the Four Noble Truths, paths, cessations, sources, and suffering. Notice that there are connections between this point in the network for both the Three Seals and the Four Noble Truths. Furthermore, for sources, you know about ignorance and attachment. For paths, you know about right mindfulness and right concentration. Notice how the network is building up. It's like the World Wide Web. You know about types of meditation, shamatha and vipassana. And you know that shamatha is a type of meditation related to right concentration. Cognitive science is able to identify what these networks are like in people's minds and to measure how quickly people are able to recall information from these networks. We know how fast you can go from a noble truth to a particular example of it. Actually, about 1/10 of a second, except for you, shorter than that, because you are so familiar. Also in long-term memory is procedural knowledge for using skills. This involves rules about what to do while performing various kinds of tasks. For example, if you were driving a car and a traffic light turns red, then you would know the rule that you should step on the brake pedal and stop. Of course, when you first tried to drive a car, you did not apply that rule and the car crashed. Or at least this is what is shown in the movies. You also know the rule that if China makes you angry, then you do compassion meditation. You have many such rules in your long-term memory. Now, I want to tell you briefly about some major discoveries for cognition and action. We have discovered that learning to perform a task, any task, toothbrushing, solving arithmetic, playing chess, driving a car, involves 3 basic stages. First, instructions about how to do the task are memorized. I explained to you how to drive. Second, practicing with the instructions creates subconscious rules that can be applied automatically without conscious thought. And third, more practice makes it easier to use these rules very quickly. This is related to a passage that you mention in your book, The Buddhism of Tibet, where you ask the question, how does one practice? And you quote Dram, who answered, cause your mind to become the practices. That's essentially what this shows also. Now, the benefits of practice in performing a task can be expressed precisely by what we call the power law of practice. This is a mathematical equation that describes how practice changes the speed with which you can perform a task. For example, how fast you can solve arithmetic problems. What's interesting about the power law of practice is if you look at the speed of performance versus the amount of practice that people have, the more practice they have, the less time that they take to complete the task. And this relationship follows an equation that is very much like what would be found in the laws of physics. So just like physics has very precise data, notice also that cognitive science can have precise data as well. These points fit that curve just as well as ones that physicists have shown you in the past. We do not envy physicists. We feel that we are strong scientists too. So, let me now talk about scientific...
David is also saying that's maybe there's a reason why sometimes they call it the soft science. The physicists.
No longer. We are hard science. Harder than physics because we know what we are talking about, whereas they do not. So, I now want to present scientific research on multitasking, and let me remind you, multitasking involves trying to do two or more tasks by working on them at the same time or by switching back and forth rapidly between tasks. Here are some major facts about multitasking that have been discovered through this research. First of all, multitasking can be studied in the laboratory. We do this by measuring response speed, accuracy, and brain activity. Let me demonstrate. Alan, I would like you to be a participant. Are you able to count from 1 to 10?
Yes.
When I say, you're not like the individual in the song. Can you count to 10 or to 1 without thinking twice?
No.
I want you to count from 1 to 10 as fast as you can when I say go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
He took about 2 seconds to do this. Now, do you know your ABCs, the alphabet?
More or less.
When I say go, I want you to say your ABCs from A through J as fast as you can. Ready, set, go.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
Excellent. Now,
That was the braking motion.
here,
So how about saying it backwards?
oh, much.
So is it because due to lack of habituation?
He does not have the appropriate rules that we talked about previously to do it backwards automatically because he has not practiced that very much. Now, we will have him multitask. I want you to count from 1 to 10 and say your ABCs, but you will go 1A to B until you finish both tasks. Are you ready?
More or less.
Ready, set, go.
1A, 2B.
Faster.
3. No, thank you. D, E. I'm finished.
This
The
is
trial is run.
This is multitasking. We can measure how long he would take if he was switching back and forth. Oh. Okay, so important results about multitasking have been found. We have found that multitasking is often difficult and inefficient.
But I mean, here the examples, the example you've given to Alan has all to do with the level of thinking. But there might be, a lot of other activities where different perceptual processes are operating at the same time.
Yes.
Like your arms doing
Yes.
something.
Yes.
That's easier.
Yes, we will talk about that, actually. So in cases like this, performance time and mistakes increase substantially. The amount of increase is larger for more complex tasks. Interruptions during multitasking are especially harmful, hard to get back on task. Multitasking interferes with learning. New information is learned superficially, not in a deep way during multitasking. Very important for high school students who like to use cell phones while studying.
So this makes sense because in the Buddhist cognitive psychology, we speak of certain types of mind that are paying attention but not registering, not ascertaining.
Yes, yes. Multitasking can be dangerous and harmful to your health. Using a cell phone while driving is like driving while being intoxicated with alcohol. Also, it causes stress that may damage the brain and body. Now, we know a lot about the parts of the brain that are involved with multitasking. Because our time is growing short, I will pass through this very quickly and just mention that we do know a lot about multitasking in the brain. We know where various functions that are needed for multitasking get performed in the brain, and we know what these brain regions are doing. We also know that damage to them will be very harmful for multitasking. And in particular, these are just some brain regions about which you will hear much more during the week, and so I will not spend lots of time on them now. Instead, let me move on to mention that people differ in skill at multitasking. Males and females are about the same, but Japanese college students are actually better than American college students. We have found this in Kyoto and Ann Arbor. This might be caused by cultural factors, but there could also be genetic factors. And in particular, we have found in our...
Now, so why genetic? This is wondering.
Well, some people believe that genetics causes subtle differences in the brain. This is possible. We do not understand them yet, but without further research, we cannot rule out this possibility. So more study is needed to know whether there are such... Give me till 10:15.
Let him. So Olin is saying that isn't it the case that in all... He's wondering whether one can actually make such claims about genetic differences across ethnic groups like Japanese and Americans. But within one ethnic group, we do see different individuals. Some are much faster in their
Yes.
thinking,
Yes.
some are less.
Japanese who born in America, they
Interesting.
also
We need, for the very good suggestion, needs to be done.
Yeah.
country environment is
So there may be environment
Yes,
is the main
yes,
factor.
yes, exactly. Yes, yes, yes,
Language? Language?
yes.
language.
Cultural more likely than genetic to be explanation. We also know that practice improves performance in
Maybe because if you're shorter physically, then you can get around much faster.
True. Also, if you are shorter, you can talk faster. So we have found that when practice continues, several stages of skill in multitasking are achieved. People get progressively better in doing 2 or more tasks, almost at the same time. It is possible to become essentially perfect in doing 2 tasks at the same time. And this is a graph that shows extra time taken in multitasking as you change the amount of practice that you have had. And you see there is a lot of extra time taken for multitasking after little practice, but by 5 sessions of extensive practice, this extra time has decreased.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it is possible, as you were suggesting before, to become very good at multitasking for certain kinds of tasks. So what? How is this related to meditation and contemplative practice? That's what we really care about. So I will describe an application to meditation and contemplative practice of ideas from research on multitasking. Meditation involves bringing things into conscious awareness for careful contemplation in order to develop right view and to perform right action. Research on multitasking is especially relevant because meditation is a kind of multitasking that relies greatly on mental control. Good mental control is the key to successful meditation.
Mental control.
So let me describe a bit more about the role of control in meditation. Control is the ability to guide physical and mental processes for achieving desired goals. Mental control guides the mind like a driver steers an automobile. Mental control enables us to stay on course while contemplating chosen objects of concentration and thinking about their true meaning. It's like what the Buddha said in the Dhammapada. Our life is shaped by our mind. We become what we think. Those who have purified their minds, who have gained self-control and truth, are truly fit to wear the monk's robes. The wise direct their thoughts to the supreme goal and thus gain highest knowledge. So, what is good control? The nature of good control can be understood with theoretical concepts developed in a field called cybernetics, and I will explain what this is. Cybernetics is a field of cognitive science and engineering that concerns the design of mechanisms for intelligently controlling the activities of artificial and natural systems. Thermostats, automobile cruise controls, heat controlling.
Controlling mechanism.
Those all are designed with cybernetics. Pioneers of cybernetics are famous scientists and engineers. Maxwell, who preceded Einstein in the 19th century, the Wright brothers, who invented the airplane, and Norbert Wiener, who was a famous mathematician at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where we had the first public Mind and Life, all cybernetics. Now, these are principles of cybernetics for good control. Good control involves sensing and adjusting the activities of interconnected mechanisms that belong to a complex system. For example, an automobile cruise control has to sense how fast a car is going and properly adjust its chosen speed. Yeah.
디 메커니즘 컨트롤 메커니즘 직시 내주시어봐 디기 돈에 아니 검자배가도야 셈그 당진 지당 메커니즘 가르이 많이 돌이야 고차도에게 답시요 그래서 he's always wondering how effective the application would be from the cybernetics. So
we will get to this. These adjustments made during control involve detecting and correcting errors in the performance of the system. For example, a cruise control must notice that the car is going too slow and increase the flow of gasoline so that it goes faster. The control process uses feedback about the system's performance to repeatedly correct errors. And cybernetics describes how the control process works. So here is an example with cruise control, about which you know. It's the device next to the steering wheel. Cruise control works by an automobile driver putting a desired speed into the control knob. That is then the chosen speed, and it goes into a working memory that the cruise control has.
This is computer. Yeah.
Yes. This chosen speed then becomes the goal for the system. Also, the system knows what the current speed is. These two things, the speed that is the goal and the speed that is the current speed, go into a device called a comparator that decides whether or not they are the same. If they were the same, everybody would be happy. But if they are different, then the cruise control must make an adjustment. It detects the error in the speed, the difference between these two, sends that to a controller that controls the amount of gasoline going to the engine. The flow of fuel changes. The car engine changes speed. And the corrected speed goes back to working memory. And this goes around and around and around. And this is how cybernetics in cruise control works. The implications of these principles are that good control involves interactions between mechanisms within a complex system of parts. For example, the knob, the working memory, the comparator, the fuel pump, and so forth. Bad control may occur because of failures in any of these mechanisms and the signals that they transmit. This explains why various types of meditation are initially rather difficult, and I will show you how so in just a minute. For example, consider shamatha breath meditation and analytic meditation. The explanation is also going to show how meditation is a kind of multitasking. So let's consider shamatha breath meditation. Now you know what shamatha breath meditation is. You have done tens of thousands of hours of it. Here are some instructions about what that involves, taken from a book by Allen. I will not give you the instructions because you don't need them. But a cybernetic analysis of breath meditation shows that it involves a complicated series of steps. First, you have to interpret the verbal instructions. You have to relax. You have to start your breathing. Then you have to attend to your breath sensations. You have to memorize what those sensations feel like. You have to maintain your current focus of attention. You have to check your breathing. You have to form an impression of what your breathing is now like. You have to compare your current breathing with your impressions from the previous breathing. You have to decide whether or not they match, they are the same. If they are, then you keep doing what you already were. If they do not match, then you have to restart your breathing so that it is proper once again. This whole series of steps is the same as with other cases of cybernetics like cruise control. Conclusion: meditation is multitasking. Why? Because task 1 is preparing with the instructions. Task 2 is being mindful in this part of the meditation process. And task 3 is introspection, checking to see that mindfulness is working properly. 1, 2, 3. What about analytical meditation? Well, my hypothesis is that analytical meditation is like solving a jigsaw puzzle. Do you know what a jigsaw puzzle is? Well, you not only know what one is, but you now own one. And there is your own personal jigsaw puzzle, which you may try to work after our meeting is over. Okay?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Meanwhile,
David?
let's move on with analytical meditation, like solving a jigsaw puzzle. This is a cybernetic analysis for it. You have to choose your topic for contemplation. You have to recall pieces of knowledge from long-term memory about your topic, like meditating on the nature of emptiness. You have to fit pieces of knowledge that you recall from memory into a mental puzzle. You have to notice gaps that are present in the puzzle, places where pieces are missing. You have to ask questions to yourself to help fill the open gaps in the puzzle. For example, what is the relationship between form and emptiness? You have to wait for an answer to come to mind from memory after you ask this question. You have to check your breathing along the way. You have to examine the answer after it comes to mind. You have to see whether or not the answer that you came up with fills the gap. You have to decide whether it does fill the gap or not. If the answer is yes, you put the answer into your puzzle and you go looking for other gaps. If it does not, then you have to find a gap again and start all over. Round and around she goes, just like before. Task 1, preparation. Task 2, mindfulness. Task 3, introspection. More, multitasking. Conclusion: shamatha breath meditation and analytical meditation involve identical types of control, even though what's going on specifically is different. Still, same type of control. Another conclusion: the Dalai Lama is an engineer. You said that if you had not been the Dalai Lama, you would have wanted to be an engineer. Well, you do cybernetics of the mind. You are in mental engineering. So you do not have to come back again in another life to be an engineer. You already are one. We're running out of time. I need to go more quickly because Diego is going to pull my ear in a few minutes. Let me just mention briefly some additional important facts. This analysis can explain why it takes so long to become very good at meditation. It suggests that having a rich mixture of meditation methods will be especially good, and we can actually suggest what that mixture should involve. It explains why people differ in how well they can learn meditation, because they have various preferred styles of multitasking. It can also explain mind wandering, which has been called monkey mind. We have a whole analysis of why monkey mind happens. I will not go through this explanation, but it does involve multitasking. And if somebody wants to hear it later, we can come back. We do have connections with Buddhist theory. For example, you have written an entire commentary on Kamalashila's 10 stages of shamatha meditation practice. Our results about skill acquisition in multitasking are consistent with this analysis.
What 10 stages?
Our research also supports the proposal that there is a stream of mind moments that passes very quickly during thinking and practice in performance. However, you may find this to be interesting. Our research suggests that the mind moments are considerably longer than what has been proposed hypothetically by Buddhist philosophers and scholars.
Because when we speak about mind moments from the Buddhist point of view, we make distinctions between two types of moments. One is called so one is called the Chatoji Gejima, which is a moment within which a shortest task can be performed.
Okay.
So that is quite gross. And then the other one is called the minutest points in time. So again, for which there are different, opinions among the Buddhist positions.
Well,
so which
it
one
might be worth
to?
discussing these various ideas, because we may be able to learn more from the Buddhists about their analysis for the timing of this whole business. Meanwhile, and that is the conclusion you see here, further collaboration between Buddhist meditators, contemplative scholars, and cognitive scientists may be interesting. There are considerable prospects for collaboration in first-person and third-person research, such as you, Francisco, and the old ones of Mind and Life have become very interested in. There is good news about possible collaborations. The stability and vividness of attention in skilled meditators may allow various unique kinds of studies. Expertise in meditation provides access to subtle levels of the mind. And there are many interesting questions for future investigation, such as, how long do mind moments last in skilled meditators? Are skilled meditators aware of rapid perceptual and memory processes? Does meditation improve people's ability to do multitasking? Does the time taken to master successive stages of skill in shamatha meditation obey the power law of practice, about which I told you previously, the little physics-like equation? What is the ideal amount of time to practice meditation per day? What is the ideal mixture of practices for becoming skilled at meditation? Are the higher states of consciousness realized by Tibetan Buddhism and other contemplative traditions like Theravada the same? How are states like shamatha and the 4 jhanas related to each other? Bunches of questions. I should also mention, although I won't belabor this, there are some possible pitfalls for this collaboration. Bad news for possible collaborations if one is not careful. Now, because we're running out of time and we don't want to emphasize the bad news quite yet, I'll just show you that there is some. And I will close. We can discuss the difficult questions later. I want to mention a few other difficult questions that get raised because of this cybernetic.
So, but we will touch upon those later.
If you wish.
Bad news.
The bad
If you wish, we may touch on bad news.
Oh yeah, that's very important.
Yes, I agree. Otherwise, I would not have mentioned the bad news.
There is, in fact, an established tradition in the Buddhist expositional system as well, where, of course, what are the pitfalls are explicitly discussed.
Yes. I would like to close with a few more difficult questions. This is speculation. You may enjoy it. Please take it with appropriate intent from me. Is an automobile cruise control conscious? Is a robot a sentient being? Can computers have emotions and other kinds of subjective experiences? Are the internet and World Wide Web aware of what is happening on Earth and in the universe? And let me explain this one. Might the Gaia hypothesis be correct? The Gaia hypothesis, this is the notion that the entire planet is conscious and is a conscious being. Would the Buddha care about all of this? If so, then how should we be treating computers, robots, the internet, and our Mother Earth? Should it be discussed in a new book by His Holiness called More Ethics for the New Millennium?
Thank you. Thank you very much, David.